A busy New York subway station. Rush hour. Hundreds of people rushing past. And in the middle of it all, an old man, quietly unrolling a small prayer rug. Nobody stopped. Nobody slowed down. The crowd moved like a river around a stone, barely noticing, barely caring. That is the nature of this city. Everyone is going somewhere. Everyone is in a hurry. Nobody has time to look at the man kneeling on the floor. But there was one man who did stop. One man who looked. And what he chose to do in the next 4 minutes, in front of hundreds of strangers, would be captured on a phone, shared millions of times, and leave people around the world asking one simple question: why did he do it? My name is Hassan. I am 74 years old. I have prayed 5 times a day for over 50 years. In Istanbul, in London, in Cairo, and for the last 22 years, here, in New York City. I have prayed in parks, in airports, in the back rooms of restaurants. I have prayed quietly, without asking anyone's permission. Because that is what a believer does. You pray where you are. You pray when the time comes. And on that Tuesday afternoon, the time had come. Hassan was born in a small village outside Konya, in central Turkey, in 1951. He was the third of 7 children. His father was a farmer who prayed before the sun rose and after it set, every single day, without exception, for 60 years. Hassan never forgot that image. A man on his knees in a field of wheat, forehead pressed to dry earth, speaking quietly to God as if they were the only two in the world. When Hassan was 19, he moved to Istanbul to study engineering. Then to Germany, then to England, and finally, in 2003, to New York City, where his daughter lived with her family. He had followed his family across continents, the way fathers do. But in every city, in every country, one thing never changed. He prayed. 5 times, every day. It was not a ritual for Hassan. It was breathing. It was the structure on which he hung his entire life. Now, at 74, his knees ached. His back gave him trouble. Getting down to the ground was no longer graceful. But he never skipped a prayer. Not once. Not in 50 years. And he was not going to skip it that Tuesday afternoon simply because he was standing in a New York subway station with 400 strangers and a 4:45 train rumbling somewhere beneath his feet. He chose a spot near the far wall, away from the main flow of foot traffic. He removed his shoes with the practiced efficiency of a man who has done this 10,000 times. He unrolled the small green rug, the same one he had carried in his bag every day for 11 years. He stood, raised his hands to his ears, and said quietly, Allahu Akbar. For the first 30 seconds, nobody noticed. Or if they did, they kept moving. This is New York. People meditate in parks. People do yoga on sidewalks. A man praying was not the strangest thing this city had seen that afternoon. But then people started to notice. Not because Hassan was loud. Not because he was blocking anything. They noticed simply because he was still. In a place where every single person was in motion, every head bent over a phone, every shoulder hunched forward in momentum, this old man was completely, perfectly still. He was in ruku, bowed at the waist, hands on his knees, as if the entire rushing world did not exist. Some people slowed. Some took out their phones. Most kept walking. But one man stopped entirely. He stood about 15 feet away, watching. He was perhaps 45 years old, broad-shouldered, wearing a yellow construction vest over his work clothes, a hard hat in his hand. He had just come off a shift. He looked tired. But he was watching Hassan with an expression that was not mockery, not yet, but something closer to curiosity, trying to understand what exactly he was seeing. He came from the left side of the platform. Mid-30s, sharp features, loosened tie, briefcase in hand. The kind of man who moves through the world as if it belongs to him. He saw Hassan kneeling and slowed down, but not with curiosity. With something else. He looked around at the small crowd that had gathered. And then, perhaps because he had an audience, perhaps because he genuinely could not contain himself, he spoke. Not quietly. Loudly enough for people to hear. Are you serious? This is a subway station, not a mosque. Some of us are trying to catch a train. Hassan did not respond. He was in sujud, forehead to the ground, and he did not move. The man in the suit looked around again. A few people in the crowd looked uncomfortable. Some stared at their phones. The man spoke again, louder this time. "Hey! Old man! I'm talking to you. This isn't your country. Go pray somewhere else." It was that sentence, that specific sentence, that changed everything. Not because of what it did to Hassan. Hassan had heard worse. He had lived through worse. He had been called names in Germany in the 1980s. He had been pulled aside at airports a dozen times after 2001. He was not a man who broke easily. What that sentence did was wake up the construction worker across the platform. The man in the yellow vest, who had been watching quietly, the curiosity in his face suddenly shifted. Something tightened in his jaw. He stood up straighter. And he began to walk. His name was Marcus. He was 47 years old. He had worked construction in Brooklyn for 22 years. He was not Muslim. He had never read the Quran. He did not know the difference between sujud and ruku. What he knew was this: an old man was on his knees, and another man was screaming at him for it. Marcus walked across the platform slowly, deliberately. He did not run. He did not shout. He walked the way a man walks when he has made a decision that he knows is right and is not afraid of the consequences. He stopped directly between the man in the suit and Hassan. He was a large man, well over 6 feet, broad through the shoulders, his yellow vest still dusty from the day's work. He turned to face the man in the suit. "You finished?" he said. His voice was low. Calm. Not aggressive, but immovable. The man in the suit blinked. "Excuse me? I was just..." "Yeah, I heard what you were just," Marcus said. "And you're done now?" Then Marcus did something that nobody expected. He didn't argue. He didn't lecture. He didn't pull out his phone. He turned around, faced the same direction as Hassan, and simply stood there. A wall. A human shield. Arms folded. Eyes forward. Letting the old man finish his prayer in peace. The platform went completely quiet. Even the man in the suit said nothing more. He picked up his briefcase, muttered something under his breath, and walked away. A few people in the crowd began to clap. Slowly at first. Then more. Hassan completed his prayer at his own pace. He did not rush. He made his final tashahhud, turned his head to the right, then to the left, and said his salam. Then he sat quietly for a moment with his eyes closed, as he always did, a few seconds of stillness at the end, a private conversation with God that nobody else could hear. Then he opened his eyes. He saw Marcus standing there. He saw the small crowd. He saw the expressions on people's faces, something between surprise and something warmer, something harder to name. He did not fully understand what had just happened while he was praying. But he understood enough. He began rolling up his prayer rug. Slowly, with the same practiced efficiency as before. Marcus watched him without moving. When Hassan had finished and stood up, carefully, one knee at a time, the way old men do, he looked up at Marcus. This man he had never seen before. This large, tired man in a dusty yellow vest who had simply stood between him and the world. Hassan placed his hand on his chest and bowed his head slightly. The way his father used to greet people he respected. "Thank you," he said. His English was accented but clear. "You did not need to do this." Marcus shrugged. Then he said something that was also captured on the video, and which would be quoted in the comments section of every platform this clip was shared on. He said, "Old man, everybody needs somebody to stand next to them sometimes." Hassan laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes from deep in the chest. Marcus smiled too, the tiredness in his face lifting briefly. They shook hands. The crowd watched this. And that moment, two strangers, different in every visible way, shaking hands in a New York subway station, felt, to everyone watching, like something they needed to see. 3 people had recorded the incident on their phones. By midnight that Tuesday, all 3 versions were circulating online. By Wednesday morning, the clip had been viewed 8 million times. By Thursday, it had been shared on every major platform in 30 countries. The comments were not what the internet usually produces. There was very little hatred. Instead, there was something else, something that surprised even the journalists who began writing about the clip. There was recognition. Hundreds of thousands of people writing things like, "This made me cry and I don't even know why." And, "I watched this 4 times. I needed this today." And, "I'm not Muslim. I'm not religious at all. But watching this old man pray in that subway station, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time." What did they feel? It is hard to put a name to it. Perhaps it was simply the sight of a man being completely, unashamedly himself, in a world that increasingly rewards performance and punishes sincerity. Here was an old man who did not care what the subway station thought of him. He had somewhere to be. And where he had to be, at that moment, was on his knees. And here was another man, a stranger, who understood that this mattered. Who chose, without any calculation, to stand next to someone because it was the right thing to do. No cameras invited. No agenda. Just one human being recognizing the dignity of another. A week after the video went viral, a journalist from a Brooklyn newspaper tracked Marcus down. He agreed to a short interview on the condition that it not be made into a spectacle. He was, he said, a private man. He explained that he had grown up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. His mother had been a church-going woman, Baptist, deeply faithful. She had died 3 years ago. He still thought about her every day. He said that watching Hassan pray in that subway station had reminded him of her, the way she used to close her eyes when she prayed, as if the entire world fell away. "My mother prayed like nobody was watching," he said. And that man prayed like nobody was watching. Even though everybody was. The journalist asked him why he had stepped in. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because my mother raised me to know that how you treat someone who can't defend themselves, that's your character. That's who you actually are." He said he had not known Hassan was Muslim when he first saw him. He had seen an old man on his knees. He had heard a younger man mocking him. And something in him had simply refused to let that continue. "I didn't do anything," Marcus said. "I just stood there." That old man did everything himself. He had more dignity in those 4 minutes than most people have in a lifetime. He paused. "I hope someone does the same for me someday. When I'm old and my knees hurt and I'm just trying to get through the day." Hassan was also interviewed. He spoke from his apartment in Queens, sitting in a worn armchair with a cup of tea on the table beside him. His daughter sat nearby, off camera, occasionally handing him words in English when his own ran out. He said that he had not fully understood what Marcus had done until his daughter showed him the video later that evening. When he watched it, when he saw this man he did not know walking across the platform and standing in front of him, he was unable to speak for a moment. "I did not know," he said. "When you are praying, you are somewhere else. You do not hear. You do not see. You are with Allah." He touched his chest. "I was here," he pointed to the floor, "but I was also there." He pointed upward. He said that Islam had always taught him this, that the world was full of people who carried faith in different shapes. That a man who stood up for justice, even without knowing why, even without knowing the name of God in Arabic, was doing something the Quran recognized. In the Quran, he said slowly, Allah says, He does not judge by your face, or your name, or your country. He judges by your heart. And by your actions. He smiled. This man Marcus. I do not know what is in his heart. But I saw his actions. And I think, Allah saw them too. He picked up his tea. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I will pray for him. Every day. Until I cannot pray anymore. There is a verse in the Quran, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 13, that says, O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female, and made you into peoples and tribes, so that you may come to know one another. Not to agree with one another. Not to be the same as one another. To know one another. There is a difference. Knowing someone requires seeing them. Really seeing them. Not their label, not their category, not the story you have already decided about them before they open their mouth. Seeing the actual person, their age, their knees that ache, their prayer rug that they have carried for 11 years, their 50 years of kneeling on the ground no matter what country they are in. Marcus did not know Hassan. He had never met him. He did not know his name, his history, or his faith. He knew one thing: there was a man on his knees, and someone was trying to humiliate him. And something in Marcus, something that his mother had placed there, years ago, through her own faith, through her own way of praying with her eyes closed, said, "Not today. Not in front of me." That is what this story is, in the end. It is not about religion. It is not about politics. It is not about immigration or identity or any of the categories we use to divide ourselves. It is about a very simple, very ancient thing: what happens when one human being sees another human being clearly, and chooses, in that moment, to stand next to them. Hassan prays every day. He is still in New York. He still takes the subway. He still unrolls his prayer rug wherever he is when the time comes. He has not changed. Why would he? He was right all along. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Marcus is going to work. Living his life. Carrying his mother's voice somewhere inside him. Probably not thinking about that Tuesday afternoon in the subway very much at all. Because for Marcus, it wasn't a moment. It was just the right thing to do. Subhanallah. May Allah bless them both.